The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian and Miss Berlin for Breaking Down Security.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. Mr. Betcher is fighting the good fight at home in Austin, Texas. He has in-laws in, so Godspeed, sir. Hope everything is okay. You remember to use our safe word, avocado, if you need anything. So just let us know. But Mr. Betcher won't be here this week. So let me see. So by the way, I have been listening to our podcasts, at least the last. I know, at least the last 5 or 6, because I do tend to edit them. And I do apologize, everybody, for last week on the news podcast where I completely dorked it up. I say a lot, and I apparently have a problem with clearing my throat. Like I've got some kind of issue. Yes.
I mean,
yes. It's annoying. Well, So I'm trying. I'm being consciously aware and trying to not do those things, at least not with the audio on, because every 5 seconds you're so I hate myself. I have a lot of peccadillos about myself.
I wonder, I'm not going to listen to mine because I don't want to know. I don't need more things to worry about.
See, you're in the privileged position of being able to not listen to the podcast.
Sure.
But we know you listen all the time because
you're
obviously on the show. That's right. So
who doesn't want to listen to their own voice?
Exactly. It's great. I every week I edit this podcast with this dumbass who keeps clearing his throat, and 2 very intelligent people. And he says, a lot. So yeah, that's just what it is.
Yeah. I don't know.
So we have some news this week again. We are looking for some more interviews. We're actually, we had one last week with Nate O'Reilly from Blue Marrow, which was a sponsored podcast. So we do appreciate Blue Marrow helping out as much as possible with, offsetting costs. And, the funny thing is the money that we get from our sponsors pretty much goes into our general fund for the InfoSec Education Foundation, so that we can pay for things like conferences and those things. We actually don't have any vendor like sponsors for our conference because we're pretty good with our money around here. We get several anonymous donations from somebody named Burr. I don't know who that is. I don't do it. I'd be the first person to tell people I don't do our nonprofit, right? Because it's like, here's another $500, or here's a couple of, But yeah, Blue Marrow has actually given us some cash to be able to help out with the conference. So next year,
man, I've been trying to get them to be a sponsor since we started the company. I've been trying. So here we go.
It's hard to sell yourself, especially when it's something you do on the side. I'm not the best salesperson in the world.
Oh, I definitely am not.
It's hard to do things like showing. I guess the only reason they reached out was they'd had some people who heard you on the show or found out you worked there and thought it'd be cool to reach out. So
yeah, which is great. Like anytime any listener reaches out and talks to a salesperson, that just makes me look that much better. So I thank all of you, whether it's been legitimate or not. It makes me harder to fire.
That is true. I wish that was the case at my own job, but I tend to not try to advertise that I have a podcast on the side of my current job. And I don't advertise where I work for on my podcast usually. So
sure.
Yeah. It takes all kinds.
Until you come work for Blue Marrow, and then
I don't know if I can do that.
It's fine. All right.
Well, we can talk
about real things now if you want.
Well, the only careers you have on there is like a product manager. I'm like, I can't be a product manager. That's like a cheerleader or something. I'd have to believe in the product. So not that I don't believe in Bloomer's product, because it, does seem to be fairly good, but
that's why I'm here.
Well, you're making it better. So that's the important thing. So, all right. So we got some news. I found this article quite interesting because I think it's pretty much, it's the Stockholm one. So I found it very interesting because I see a lot of the same issues, not just from a product point of view, but I see this in security as well. So the story is, and it's from wired.co.uk. I found this on wired.com, but because, wired.com is so awesome, they had it behind a paywall. For some reason, Wired Co UK does not have that. So they are talking about this thing called Skoll Platform, which I wonder what that's about, but it's in Stockholm, Sweden, and it's a school platform or an education platform app that teachers, parents, and kids can use to do things like check for grades, regular attendance. It's the technical backbone for all things education, from registering attendance. It's a complex system made up of 3 different parts, 18 different individual modules, and maintained by 5 external companies. So it sounds fairly simple.
Sure.
What's not to love? 18 modules, 5 different companies are having to maintain these 5 different modules. So it's a sprawling system used by 600 preschools and 177 schools. So it's not a small application. And so apparently it's completely unusable, according to the parents. They say that it's hard to find things. They complained about the complexity of the system. The launch was delayed. There was reports of project mismanagement, and according to a link in the article itself, it's been labeled an IT disaster. I can't read it.
We've all known those apps.
Well, I can translate this. Okay, so it's how the school platform. I don't know. I can't read Swedish. I don't know what this is.
Oh no.
God damn it. Okay. Stockholm City scolded school system, cost hundreds of millions of dollars, taking years to develop, but has been dragged with problems and safety holes. So the issue comes out that the parents decided to get together and make their own version of this, sidestepping the original app because the original app is trash. The head app developer, who was a parent, asked for things like API documentation. And I think the only part in the article where he goes wrong is he says that where was it? He said, he wrote city officials asking to see the API documents. While waiting for a response, he logged into his account and tried to work out whether the system could be reverse engineered. In just a few hours, he created something that worked. I had information on my screen from the school platform, and then I started building an API on top of their lousy API. My problem is that point right there. If he was trying to create a completely clean room implementation, he would not have been able to, log in and do stuff, because there could be, stolen IP, whether or not that's the case or not. But yeah, so within a couple hours, he created a new API that worked better than their API, and they were worried about GDPR fines. They had a GDPR
they got
fine.
fined.
Right, in November of 2020.
Yeah, right.
$4 million, I'm sorry, not dollar, but SEK.
456,000.
456,000 US GDPR for serious shortcomings in the platform. Their worry was that the new better app that the parents are using would actually cause more fines. So they started trying to block people from doing these things. And as I was reading through this document, I was like, wow, this is exactly, well, I wouldn't say exactly, but this is how I have seen a number of places treat people who are trying to find better ways to deal with security, dealing with process, dealing with things that don't work well, trying to create improvements and then getting blocked for all intents and purposes.
I mean, they offered up the code for them to use. It was
right.
Open source.
That's right. They open sourced it, so it's available. And then the school was like, "Yeah, we don't want you to do that. Can you unpublish that code?" So and they say that they actually started charging people €1 for it. It'd been downloaded 12,500 times on iPhone and Android. It has 4.2 star rating and only shows basic information. So in the time that, what looks like a couple of months. So no, he released it. So in 4 months, he created an app that was arguably better than something that took other folks years to make.
Yeah.
So obviously
and everything they said, everything that they displayed in the app was open and public information anyway.
Right.
So
right.
If you didn't want it out there, or if it wasn't supposed to be out there because of GDPR, they shouldn't have even been able to get access to it.
Yeah. I think we see this. I at least have seen this a lot at other orgs where, they mentioned 5 different companies, all these different things. You've got, people inside these organizations building these apps. Did they, one of the things that I found when you're building a process is you've got to get input from people. You've got to talk to the principals involved, the teachers, parents, kids, IT. Well, I would say even kids, because kids have got to use this app too. So if, obviously they're probably better at using it than the parents are, but I still can't figure my VCR out. So my Betamax machine is still busted. So, but yeah, so, I mean, what happened was, what it sounds like was that they were not, they didn't actually take time to actually use it in the real world. And then the parents decided to find a better way of doing something because they needed to get access to necessary information.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to use it all the time. Like there's apps that we have to use through school that are just, don't sound like they're as big of a pain as whatever this app was, but
right.
I know there's apps that, even currently, that it's just easier to write like bash scripts to get around it.
Yeah. 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 I have, let me see, what was the one I used? Trying to remember what it was, but yeah, it was easier just to run a wget and call the API that way through wget and logging in with the, your UI and your API keys. And, the problem with that is, I have a different use case than what they probably made it for. And, I'm an outlier in some cases. Back when I was doing PCI audits and stuff, it was just easier to pull down a CSV file or to pull down that data and be able to format it how I need it versus how it might've been shown up on the website. We have a system at work that I use that shows us all these apps and services, and if they've been, certified in the last, year and a half or whatever. And somebody, it's hard to search. It's hard to find components. It's hard to find items and projects in the UI that was created. And the problem is this has been around forever. So the UI is kind of clunky. Somebody created a better dashboard, and it basically what happened when I first got there was, oh yeah, if you want a copy of the entire system, you had to contact somebody who would do a carve of the entire database and store it in some bucket somewhere that you'd be able to, I think it was some Azure bucket. I forget what they call Azure stuff in Azure, but and then you can go and download 100 million line CSV or whatever. And this person created a nice little dashboard that you can go in, you can filter on, and it's almost as good as Excel spreadsheet. And I love it. And unfortunately, unlike this group, which the Stockholm school system said, oh yeah, stop using that. Our current organization is really cool with people using it and are actually happy that makes it more efficient. So, I think the moral of the story is, get when you're creating a new security process, or you're thinking about installing some new software, or you're looking at doing pretty much anything that is going to affect users, try to do due diligence and find out who your principals are, find out what their use cases would be for this. Maybe they like what's already there and they don't want to change. That is the worst.
That always happens. That always happens. There's never anybody that likes change. Rarely do people like change, even in tech, which drives me crazy because we should be used to it. Things change all the time.
We should be embracing change whenever possible. We should try to stay as what do they call it? Frosty. That's what the young kids these days say.
I don't know that they do.
well, okay, well,
maybe they do. I don't know.
I made some eggnog tonight, and I remarked loudly to my 16-year-old that, oh, I can have eggnog lattes in the morning. She's like, you are basic. And I'm like, oh. And I was like, wow. And she's like, you like iced coffee too. That makes you like super basic. And I was like, oh God.
Are you wearing your Uggs right now?
I don't have Uggs. No. When I first heard of Ugg boots, I was like, okay. And then I made the ugly kind of joke, but
right.
Yeah. So I would say, do what you can to reach out to people who are going to be using this system, not necessarily you, whether it be your management and whatever, and make sure that you figure out if it's actually useful for them.
And then before you write your own API, make sure it's legal first.
Right. Exactly. Oh, yes, exactly. No, this one actually does have a happy ending. They said they were on vacation and they got contacted by, let me see, what was it? Landgren was traveling with his brother to his brother's wedding in France at the start of September when he got a phone call. The city was changing its position on Opna. Okay, I'm not even going to pronounce it. It's OPPNA, and there's a little 2-dot thing over the O sign. Skoll Platformen and any apps seeking to do similar things have decided to let others access the data within its system. To do so, the city struck a deal with an external provider that will help set up licenses between the open source version and the city. The other thing that I found interesting in this story was they went the nth level. These folks that created this new source, they actually had a third party go and look at the open source and do like a third party security assessment review.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. And it was crazy because they said they had up to 40 people working on development of this app. I mean, they did a good.
I just figured it was one pissed off parent.
No. Parent. Yeah. I mean, and I added that story about they're saying it took millions of dollars and there's security issues, but it was also an issue with just, it was hard to navigate and stuff. So, I mean, I'm sure it made sense to it's like when you're writing a paper. I'm sure Miss Berlin, you wrote your book,
right.
Defensive Security Handbook. You read that book and went over that text hundreds of times, and you get eye blind to it.
Yes.
The developers making apps.
I don't know if maybe developers do this too, because there's a thing that you're supposed to like explain your code to the rubber ducky. Right.
I'm sorry.
Have you heard that?
No, I have not.
If when you're writing code, if you can't explain it out loud to the rubber ducky, like you're doing it wrong, like you have a little rubber ducky on your desk.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's a thing. And then I'm pretty sure it is. I've seen it from people. And then like when I do stuff, I read it out loud all the time. So I mean, yes. I read our entire book out loud 7 times.
Ooh, 7 whole times.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, okay, when you read it out loud, do you read like word for word? Because I was told by this too, by somebody I'm not a fan of, but he's actually correct. If you read it out loud, especially if you're writing something, you can pick up on like, wow, that didn't sound right. I should rewrite that part. And it keeps you from getting like eye blind or whatever it is. It's like, oh, I know everything's fine in here. I think people assume that things like code and docs are always, 100% perfect. So.
Right, Mom.
I love it.
Jeez,
no, you know what? Kids are awesome. It's okay.
I love you, James. Good night. Thank you for interrupting. You're welcome. Night, Mom.
Girl. You're welcome, Mom. Yeah.
He is getting a very deep voice now.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right. So on to another thing. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm really going to work on this week. So yeah. And I'm going to make sure it ain't 55 damn minutes like it was last week. So Security Week is saying that Bracktooth, which I think we've talked about on the show before, has some new software vulnerabilities that could affect millions of devices. So I believe 20 CVEs have been assigned, 4 additional vulnerabilities pending CVE assignment from Intel and Qualcomm. So it's the Norwegian word brak, which is not the character from Space Ghost. It actually is Norwegian for crash in English, and tooth from Bluetooth. So of course, tooth from Bluetooth. So they are looking at various SoCs or system on chips that were affected, including audio products. There are Qualcomm CSR 8811s and 8510 SoCs and TI's Texas Instruments CC 2564C. No fix will be released. So that's kind of interesting that they will not be issuing a fix for these, because I would say a lot of these are in, $30 or $30 Bluetooth earbuds. And, is
how
it
long do they really last?
That's true. That's true. I mean, these kinds of small devices like this are built to have a finite lifespan, or, lost span, if you will, the time to lost, if you will. And it says they targeted audio products, but other implementations might be affected as well. The only other thing I would say is, depending on what SoCs these are, sometimes they find themselves into larger objects, like your brand new smart TVs, or if you have a device that has Bluetooth in it, like a car, or your phone, or what have you. Those SoCs often end up elsewhere. But POC is now been released. It says it will be released in late October. So presumably this has already been released, according to the researchers. So you'll have to. I'm not going to add links to that POC because, I know we have real hackers and ransomware type folks probably listening to the show, waiting for me to put stuff up, but I don't have those links. So, but it does affect anything from Bluetooth 3 to 5.2. Apparently we're up to 5.2 now.
Right. I saw that
on Bluetooth. Okay. Right on. All right. So
what about the CISA one?
The CISA one, yes. So this came out, I want to say Tuesday of last week. It actually came up, and we talked about it at our CSEC East. But Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security Agency, called CISA or CISA, has published a directive on Wednesday, which was last Wednesday, the 3rd. Yep. So that's why I was like, we talked about it at CSEC East, but we didn't talk about it last week on the show. There are 300 CVEs out there that they are considering that need to be patched. And they have put very, what do they call those? Aggressive deadlines for these things. So it covers every major vendor: Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, and Google. And 300 of them. And also Apple, by the way. Apple's also on there. So don't think, Apple got away. But yeah. So there's a link in the show notes to both the article and for the checklist. So there are things like Trend Micro vulnerabilities. When we talked at CSEC East, somebody had made mention that they'd seen this list before, and they said, as long as you're actually doing patches on a semi-regular basis, you should be fine. But there's other ones like VMware. So if you're using VMware Fusion or VMware Remote, ESXi, for instance, those are vulnerable. So the whole thing is, so they issued this on November 13. Depending on the level of vulnerability, you have to patch by the 17th of November, 2021, or May 3rd of 2022.
Does it go into how they pick these? Just like anything with a high enough CVE score?
I believe that is the case.
Oh, here it is. I found it. Sorry. It's either it has a assigned CVE ID. There's reliable evidence that the vulnerability is actively exploited in the wild. Mm-hmm. And then if there's a clear remediation action, like a vendor provided update.
Right.
That makes sense, right? Things that are bad and you can fix.
Right. Or ones that have been actively used. So, I don't know if anybody has been around in January of this year, but there was something called SolarWinds, and that's on the list. So if you haven't patched your SolarWinds shit, one, you've probably already, been in trouble with the government if you're a government entity.
Living under a rock.
Because, I believe you were supposed to have patched all your stuff like the Monday after it came out, because that's when they gave you the deadline to fix that. So there's a number of things here. My worry is that depending on these CVEs, you're having people patch things that, and I've seen this a lot at other organizations, and I've been guilty of it as well. patches come out. Oh, you need to patch this thing immediately. You need to make it happen. And, these CVEs may be, 2.0s, 3.0s, like you said, though, the ones that are dated the 17th of November, may be used actively in campaigns, and they want to make sure that everybody gets those in. The bigger issue is some of these, like the Cisco stuff, you're working remotely and you're patching stuff on systems that, you could get locked out of, or bad reboots or something. And then you're going to have to drive, 2 hours to your, what used to be your office, or, the nearest data center where you're.
I mean, that's why you always have like failovers, right?
This is the US government we're talking about. I've obviously never worked there. Yeah. But so my worry is that this is taking away from work that could actually be useful, like, setting up your logs, or, finding real information about these things. I mean, you definitely do want to patch, your infrastructure if those are a thing, but if some of these on here, are not even in your environment, you don't have to worry about them, which is great. But, it just seems like there's opportunity costs elsewhere that you're going to lose out on if they dropped this on the Wednesday. Thankfully, they didn't wait till Friday. But now you have to go through and triage and find out, what all your vulnerabilities are. I would hope that you have that stuff, but if you don't, then, this may be a good opportunity for you to start, establishing, asset baselines or hardware baselines and patching baselines, and what you have and what you don't have.
Yeah.
Miss Berlin's laughing, and,
I'm doing a webinar, I think next week, the week after, about like securing legacy systems. So it just makes me laugh about.
Well, let's talk about that. We have about 5 minutes left here. So let's talk about that. You said establishing patching baselines and okay. So for people who may not know, where are you doing this webinar? Because they need to sign up and watch it.
I think it's through work.
Okay, great. So hopefully you'll be.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, look at my. I'm sure I'll tweet it out somewhere.
Okay. So go check that out.
Yeah, it's with the CEO of Lime Networks. He's it's I think in the Netherlands. They're a big MSP support place.
Okay. All right.
And I mean, MSPs have a lot of issues with legacy systems, and I mean, everybody that's ever been a sysadmin gets really annoyed when a security person says, "Just patch. What's the big deal?"
Right.
Because it's never that easy. And so we're going to talk about some of that stuff. Okay.
Do you have like a checklist of things? Maybe we could give a little sneak peek of what people could get
the stuff. The stuff I'm going to cover is like just like good baseline stuff that you can do for legacy systems. So like segmentation and making sure they're backed up and patched to whatever level that you're allowed to patch to, and all of like adding it to Active Directory, like the older systems, adding them to Active Directory gives you the ability to not worry about the work group, all the work group like hacks that there are, disabling a bunch of services that aren't needed because there's all those like old vulnerable services that are on a bunch of different servers. Right. Like the World Wide Web Publishing Service and IIS and all those kind of things, right? That
all the INET pub stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Super fun. Guest accounts.
So let's say you work for one of these companies, these government organizations that have to do all this patching, and they have a Windows XP box, for instance. Would you suggest, because one of the things you're talking about baseline security, you're trying to add security like network segmentation and whatever. Would you add them to the existing Active Directory structure? Because, I mean, it's old and it's deprecated and there's a lot of vulnerabilities. And if somebody could find this system on the network, they could potentially exploit it. Would adding it to Active Directory make it better to secure? Is it actually possible to do that? Or would it be something where you'd want to isolate that through the network and not even allow it to do things like, interact with the Active Directory network?
I guess it depends on how good you can segment and secure it. right? Like if it's something that's a higher value target, I guess. I don't know if I would add it to like the primary Active Directory. You can always create a second one.
Right.
But having it a member of some kind of domain doesn't necessarily have to be the main one. And if you're worried about security, don't have it in any kind of trust relationships with your main one either.
Well, could you have some kind of script that you could run locally on the boxes that would, set some Active Directory or not Active group policies or something like that to help lock it down without the necessary, Active Directory policy? I mean, it seems like restricting access to only certain people, and not allowing, things like remote logins ever, that kind of stuff. I was just thinking of ways that might be helpful there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still rather add it to Active Directory than have like any kind of remote management on XP.
Okay, and you could isolate that in Active Directory into its own forest or whatever. So
that
makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, cool. All right, well, that's it for this week. We're done. Frank, there you go.
Stop talking now.
Just stop talking now. And we're done. No. So. Ms. Berlin, how would people find you if they wanted to hook up and find out about with the poor choice of words? Control Z, that last 10 seconds. Shit. Control Z. How would people find you?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's sweet. So where are you at on Twitter?
At InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR, and at Hackers Health. And like we already talked about at BlueMiraSec, and if we'll see what happens, maybe at ShmooCon, that would be super cool if I could make it there.
Very nice.
Yeah, and definite plans to go to all the Wild West Hacking Fest stuff.
When's that?
I don't know.
They're not having it in Deadwood in wintertime, are they?
No, they didn't do that one, but they're gonna do Wild West again in San Diego, I think. Way West.
Way West, yeah. Okay. I'm so happy to know that Way West Hacking Fest will be down in San Diego, because in about 18 months I'll be down there. So
yes.
Yeah. So you had the painting thing on Friday, right?
Yes,
How well did that go?
It went really good. We had I want to say about a dozen people show up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it went super well. There was Eric Lees on our board, and his whole family showed up, and like all of them painted.
Oh, very nice.
So that was really cool.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we painted like a pretty water scene with palm trees and a boat.
Okay. I was going to pick your brain about how you select those, or if
just ones that we think we can do.
Oh, that's cool. I do invisible cows in a snowstorm.
Ooh, nice.
in wintertime. That's a really easy one for me. Invisible cows. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah. And so you'll be doing some more of those, I'm assuming, in the future, and we'll definitely let people know.
Kaylee, our volunteer that does the painting sessions, mentioned her company. They do like cooking classes.
Awesome.
I'm like, ooh, that would be kind of cool. So we might do some cooking classes through. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Prerequisites must have at least a heating element or a microwave or something.
Right.
Or fire if you are, roughing it. So
yeah.
Cool. Okay. You can follow Mr. Boettcher. He is the sole developer of LogMD, which is a logging tool to help with setting up proper logging of Windows machines, log-md.com. And you can follow him on Twitter at BoettcherPwned, BoettcherPwned. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE, and our official podcast is BrakeSec, BRAKESEC. Thank you to our Patreon donors. They help out just like Blumera. I would definitely next year we'll probably try to make sure we mention them, because they're actually helping us with things like hosting of web services, domains, Zoom, and also helping us with the conference so that we don't have to have vendors and kowtow to the corporate overlords and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Also would like to thank George F., who just became a $3 patron. Actually, it's just a week ago, but it came in after I was posting my show. So he's doing a $3 a month thing. So that's pretty awesome. We do thank him for his efforts there. So appreciate that, and all of our patrons for their support of our show. I don't think we have anything else. I mentioned an officers meeting for our nonprofit for InfoSec Campout 2022. We do need call for papers and call for workshops. So if you have an interesting workshop, and you're up in the Pacific Northwest specifically, that would be nice if you could, maybe keep us in mind in August 26th through 28th. And we will post that up here, hopefully for after the first of the year. So I think it'll be enough time to give us ideas on how we're going to have to handle workshops and speakers and everything. And let me see. I think that's it.
Yep.
So, Ms. Boleyn, thanks for coming. Thank your children for being so patient while I take you away from them. It's okay. You're going to look back on this one day and laugh and good times.
Well, when you say I'm going to go podcast, do not open this door, and they still both do it.
Look. I heard blah, 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 open this door. So, okay, that's what I hear. Okay. Blah, 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 open this door. It's okay. Okay. They're a joy. They're worth it. So.
Totally worth it.
Cool. All right. Well, that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Hope you have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Get your boosters if you can. Be kind to one another. Wash your hands, you nasties. And take care of yourself, because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.